Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be making a no oven chocolate cake made mostly from Oreos, and we're going to be using the recipe from the channel Nino's Home, so the link will be in the description if you want to check out that video and follow along if I'm not explanative enough. What is it?
Unexplanatory.
So they start out by separating their Oreos from the filling, and then they crush up the outer cookies and make it into like a bread. Oh my gosh, no bread. Well, there's no bread in this. Why am I saying that? Then they add in some baking powder. Then you add in some milk and then you mix it around. Don't really like the sound of that noise. Ugh. This is like kind of like ASMR baking, but still like that noise, that kind of gloopy mixing noise, just ugh. Comment down below what noise you hate the most. So then they cook it in a frying pan on an element. So that's the whole point. You still have to cook this recipe. It's not like a raw cake or anything like that. You still are cooking it, just not in the oven. So they put their mixture in a non-stick saucepan and then put another pan over the element and then put that saucepan on top of that. So that way you're not, I guess, gonna burn the bottom of it, I would assume. So then they cooked that for 40 minutes on low heat. I had mine on even lower heat, so mine took like over an hour to cook, but that was because I really didn't want to burn the bottom of it, so I wasn't really sure what the right temperature would to be, because you know, low heat is kind of vague. So as you can tell, I'm a professional baker, I don't make any mistakes, I know what I'm doing. So then, once it's cooked, they take it out and they just chuck some ganache on it and a little bit of shaved chocolate, and then you're done. So it's a very simple recipe. So now let's have a look and see how I got on. So the first thing I started to do was take out the filling of a whole package of Oreos, which is roughly 300 grams of Oreos. And since I didn't have a really large plastic bag to kind of crush the Oreo cookies in, I just did it in a food processor because it was a lot easier. It's less effort basically, and I was being lazy, so there we go. But then on your last cookie, you must proceed to make a gigantic Oreo from all the other fillings from the other cookies and just make this massive cookie. It had some heft to it and I weighed it and it was about 100 grams. And it was about 100 grams. Most people have heard of double stuffed Oreos, and that was like a 28 times stuffed Oreo, so I would be happy buying those. If they sold those at the store, I would definitely buy them. So then I blended up all my cookies in the food processor until they're nice fine like crumbs basically. You don't want to be eating it and then like everything else is soft and then you just get this like piece of like partly soggy Oreo. That would be kind of gross. If you're thinking about doing that, don't. I don't know why you think about doing that, but just please don't. So then the next thing you're supposed to do is add all those crumbs into a bowl and add 1 teaspoon of baking powder and then just kind of whisk that all together until it's fully combined. Mine had a whole bunch of lumps in it for some reason, so you know I had to like get rid of all the lumps. So make sure your baking powder is very well dispersed because you don't want to take a bite of the cake and it just tasting like baking soda because that would be absolutely gross.
Disgusting!
So then after you've done that, then is time to add your liquid. So you add in 1 cup of milk. So then you just start whisking all that together and combining it until you have a nice kind of batter. And then to that batter, finally you get to add in your Oreo fillings. And then you just mix that in. That's a little bit harder to do because they are kind of thick. So it does take a little while to mix that in. So that was all very easy, but then came the part that I was most nervous about, which was actually cooking this thing. So take your smallest saucepan and then cut a piece of parchment paper to fit in the bottom and then spend about 5 minutes wrestling with the parchment paper trying to get it to stay flat when it keeps on trying to wind back up. So I oiled the heck out of my saucepan because I really did not want it to stick to the sides because I don't have a non-stick saucepan. So I painted on about 2 liters of oil around the sides of my pan. And so then comes the point where you can pour your batter into your nicely oiled pan. I also didn't have the same pan that he put on the element first, so I just used a cast iron pan and then put my saucepan on top of that. It being a cast iron pan, it absorbs a lot of the heat, so mine did take quite a bit longer to cook. Mine took over an hour to cook, and the one in the video took about 40 minutes to cook. So if I was to make this again, I'd definitely probably turn up the element just a little bit more to try to cook it a little bit faster. I just didn't want to burn it and then have to make 2 because then, you know, you have to go to the store, buy some more Oreos, which means buying 2 packs of Oreos because nobody just buys 1 pack of Oreos because you got to have some for baking and you got to have some for eating too. Those are the rules when you're buying Oreos. Nobody just buys 1 package of Oreos. So you leave it there for your 40 minutes and I checked it after 40 minutes and it needed a little bit more time. So then I gave it like another 20 minutes and then it still needed more time, so I gave it like another 5, and then it was done. So once you think your cake is done, stab a skewer into the tallest part of the cake, and then struggle to get your camera to focus on the skewer to show everyone that it did come out clean and that the cake was done. So once your cake is cooked, you want to let it cool down, so you take it off the heat and let it cool down somewhere.
Till it's cool, just cool, then into the mouth. Nice.
So then eventually the cake should start coming away from the sides of the pan if you oiled it enough. So once it's really cooled and you can take it out of the pan easily, I basically just dump the cake onto my hand and then put it on a cooling rack. So then in the next part of the video, they pour some nice chocolate ganache over their cake. So we're gonna make some chocolate ganache. So basically what you need to do is you need to take a can of full fat coconut cream. Don't use the type that I did. I just used some coconut milk that I chucked in the fridge. It's not quite creamy enough for what you're really looking for. So just go and buy the full fat coconut cream, and then make sure you use a can opener to open up your coconut cream, even if it has one of those easy to pull tabs. Like so many times I've like tried to open those up and then just like the tab just falls off. My brother says it's my technique, but I'm pretty sure it's the can's fault. I feel like I'm like an old person, like, back in my day we didn't have easy to pull can tabs. So kids these days have it so easy. So the ganache recipe is a 1-to-1 ratio. So just take 2/3 of a cup of the top part of the coconut cream. You don't want the liquidy part, you only want that white part from the top. And then you want about 100 grams of semi-sweet chocolate, about 50% or higher. 70% is also quite nice. So then into a saucepan, add your coconut cream and then just whisk that all together on about medium heat. You don't want it to boil, so just kind of make sure it doesn't boil. Don't let it boil. So once it's quite warm and liquidy, you can start adding in your chocolate and then just whisk it all together until the chocolate is all melted. And there you go, you have basically the easiest ganache you can ever make. So then depending on how you like your ganache, you can either put it in the fridge if you like it to be kind of thicker, or if you want to do it how they did in the video, you just let it cool down a little bit and then you just pour it on top. So because I was following the video, I decided to kind of pour it on as well. Before you pour over your chocolate ganache, make sure you have a plate underneath your cooling rack so you can catch the extra ganache because you don't want to waste it. So pour a little bit in the middle and then make sure you go around the edges. If you just pour it all in the middle, it'll run off unevenly and then you'll have chunks that don't have ganache on the sides. And then to do even more decoration, because we're making this super fancy and we're copying the video, you want to grate up some chocolate and then just sprinkle that around the sides. I ended up grating up quite a bit more chocolate than I ended up needing, so I just sprinkled more on my cake so mine has a little bit more on it. And then it was time to eat it. So I cut myself a nice slice of the cake and went for it, and it was actually pretty tasty. The cake texture was really great actually. It turned out very spongy and quite soft, and not nearly as sweet as I expected it to be, considering it was a whole package of Oreos. But as you can see, that didn't stop me from finishing the slice. Definitely adding the milk does reduce the sweetness of the cake, so I would definitely make the ganache to go on top of it. At first I was thinking, wow, that's gonna be really sweet, it's gonna have Oreos and it's got ganache on top, but it actually works out really good because the Oreo cake itself isn't actually that sweet. So it was definitely a good experience. The cake turned out really well. So this is definitely a recipe worth making, and if you are looking for like a simple, easy cake to make, definitely give this a try because it's really fun. So we're gonna end the video here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I have a lot of other cooking videos and other random videos, so check those out too.